Right, looking forward to this one. Before we jump into it, Loretta, I'll start with you. Do you want to work your way around? Just a very brief intro into who you are and where you work and what you do, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. Loretta Franks. I'm the Global Chief Data Analytics Officer for Kellanova, formerly Kellogg's, which you probably know more well known. Based in Manchester, and yeah, thanks for having us.
No problem. Ranil?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Ranil Boteju. I'm the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Lloyds Banking Group. I'm just about to celebrate my 4th year at Lloyds Banking Group. So, yep.
Nice. You Aimee?
Hello everyone, I'm Aimee Smith. I'm the Director of Data at the Metropolitan Police Service. I've been there for 25 years. This is my second to last week in my job before I move on. I know, so this could go anywhere in terms of answering questions.
Is this where all the secrets are revealed?
It's coming out, ask me anything you like.
Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Pimblett, Chief Data Officer of Rightmove, and I'm looking forward to it now.
Yeah. Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane Smith, not related to Aimee, I don't think. I'm Chief Data and AI Officer at ThoughtSpot. I've been there for 4 months, so this will not be going anywhere. It will be going in a very, very definite
Party line is going to be towed.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Okay. So we'll start off with probably the question that is most on the nose. And Steve, I'll come to you because I know you've got some pretty thought-provoking thoughts around this. But how do we transform a technological-centered data function, which a lot are in many businesses, into a business value-centered function?
I'm wondering what my controversial view is.
No, you've just got some pretty good frameworks around how you do it.
Yeah, so I guess over my career, being a Chief Data Officer a few times, and very much always frame it in the value. That's where we start. So never really talk about data, never really talk about technology, just talk about business. What's the strategy? Where's the value? What's the pain points? Start with the end in mind, work back, and very much try and set up the data strategy in support of what the business strategy is and how the business wants to measure, communicate, talk, and drive value. So we don't really do data or technology at all.
Nice. Loretta, what are your thoughts on that? Moving it away from being viewed as a technological problem to a business problem?
Yeah, I suppose my background's not technology or data, so that helps. So I've worked in lots of different business functions, been at Kellanova 20 years. So that's a good start, because if I went down the technology route, I'd get rumbled pretty quickly. And I think also I think we're CPG industry, typically slightly lower maturity in terms of kind of, all the advancements in AI, etc. But what it does do really well is, if we think about all the brand work that we do and how we engage with consumers, and that's where the passion is in the company. We've got marketeers say we're a brand company. Obviously, our supply chain would say we're a manufacturing company, but actually, that's rooted in where we started, and so that's the best way to enter into any conversation in Kellogg. So it feels like an open door, and the technology is they glaze over very quickly anyway. So I think to be able to enter in a different route works.
Actually, a quick follow-up question on that. In your organisation, was it ever perceived to be a technological function? Did you have to do any work to kind of change that perception, or was it always
I'd say it was more
asset?
Governance, but in a kind of master data like that, it was really more in that space. Probably not less so on the. We've had a CTO that was all the kind of technology piece, SAP, and all that kind of. Probably didn't really understand the tech stack for DNA, and we branded our tech stack called Cortex, not the same as the Snowflake Cortex, but we were first, and that was just there's different tools underneath it. But the reason we branded it and we did a bit of a marketing campaign was that I don't want them to know or care whether they're using what technology underneath. But where we struggled to get out of was master data hierarchies, mappings, governance, which is super important, but it really made it difficult for us to get into the value conversation. So that pivot has been more of a challenge than it was on the technology.
Still seen as a technical challenge to be fixed as opposed to an asset. Yeah, interesting. Ranil, come to you.
Yeah, so my view is it depends where you are in the maturity cycle. So when you're starting out, it is somewhat technological. Like it is very much a specialist area. There are basically high priests of data between a business person and getting an outcome. That's how things are at the start. as things get more mature, though, basically you'll see data teams, analytics teams, AI teams become more about enablers, right? So really, there's a point at which you start to build, just consistent workbenches. We've just built one for generative AI, which we call Cortex. We may need to change the name now. You realize
Ours is with a K because everything at Kellanova is
brilliant.
with a K.
Is there anything else? But look, there's a point at which you start to build enabling capability, and really the role of a data team is more about how do you enable a business? How do you actually create enabling capability, self-serve, but effectively stop being that kind of intermediary, right? It's effectively create like things that everyone can self-serve on, consistent guardrails, and really kind of coordinate the whole kind of value piece, right? So that's the shift, but that really starts with where you are in the maturity cycle.
Nice. Jane, any thoughts on moving away from data being seen as a kind of technological center of excellence into that business value bucket?
I do have some thoughts, which is fortunate.
Perfect.
It would be awkward if I didn't. So I used to be a chief data officer at an insurance company, a tech company, and when I was there, I just pointed everything around what is going to make money, what's the revenue driver. And when you're in a tech company, you can do cool things like have website models on your website that predict when people are going to drop off the buying journey, and they keep them on. So you can start to see the impact of that in your conversion, your sales. These are things you can do in a tech company, and even cooler after that, you can have that model as something that you can sell as a subscription to another company, or you can sell licenses. So in that role, always just pointed things around new IP, new revenue drivers. Now that I'm at ThoughtSpot and I look across a lot of companies, I think about this in a similar way. I suppose the way I think about it is in your business, whatever that is. What question, if you could answer it, would really move the needle on your business? So if you're a pharma company, maybe something like what late stage drugs should we accelerate? If you're a wealth management company, it would be like, how can we optimize the portfolio? If you're insurance, how can we protect it from risk before the hurricane hits? But I always would move away from that technological function to that more business function by focusing on what are those questions that really would move the needle.
Nice. Aimee, I always love asking you this question because obviously in 99.9% of my conversations, value often means something related back to a P&L or how it could be measured in some kind of way. And
stuff I don't understand.
In the police force, obviously that is not the case. So value means different things in different contexts.
Yeah.
Talk me through that journey of what data was seen like to where it is viewed.
Yeah, can I answer the question? Yes, but can I do that after I've answered the original question? Because I've been really thinking hard about what I'm going to say. And
absolutely.
I'll answer the specific question. So I've got a really favourite Catherine Tate meme. When she's the ground, she goes, "Here we go," like that. That's what I feel I'm about to do. So sorry, everybody. So first of all, I genuinely believe that I work in an organisation that is about keeping London safe. I understand why I get up in the morning. I know what I'm going to do, and I know what my team's job is there to do. My team's job is to make sure that when everybody else is trying to keep London safe, they're doing it in an ethical and legal and also an effective way. That's my job, right? So there's a part of that. So I'm with you about, I don't really anymore talk about data. I've massively failed doing that a lot in the past. So my answer to the question about taking you from tech to more value-centric teams is, there are two, in my experience, and I've only worked in one organisation, but having been to lots of these events and heard people, there are two problems with being tech-centric and moving to business-centric. And one is leaders don't really understand what data is and what data can do for it. And everybody's answered the same answer I would give, which is you've got to move towards describing business value and blah, 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 and all those things, which I absolutely agree with. The second problem is the perception of people who work in data themselves. Well, they're sort of obsessed with tech is king and data gets always squashed down by tech. I know, because I used to say it. But after a while, if you just forget about all that politics inside tech and data, which no one else in your business cares about, because in my business, they're out rolling around on the streets or driving from A to B with the fast lights on. They don't care whether you're tech or data. What they care is, when you do your job, does it make my job easier and does it keep people safe? So we have got a perception problem as well that we kind of create, and there's not lots of nods, so maybe it's just me. But we've got a problem in data. People feel kowtowed under tech in a way that I don't think they need to. I don't think we need to perpetuate that conversation. I think you need to get people talking to who they're providing a service to, what their capability is. And it's your job as a data leader, whether they're sitting under tech or finance or the CEO, to imbue those people with confidence that they're doing something that's worthwhile for whatever the mission of your organisation is. That, to me, is more important.
100%. Yeah, I can't agree more. Aimee. Whoever wrote these questions, I've terrible. Jane, I'll come to you. We can work across. In your experience of, I guess what we're talking about here is investment, right? And picking the right use cases, and how do you go and secure investment for the tools and the people and so on and so forth. And I guess how do you evidence that you're going to deliver value? That's the question. How do you balance that request for cash and people versus the outcome that you're hopefully going to drive?
I really apologize if anyone has heard this story before, because I have told you a few times, but when I was growing up, my father was a builder. And when you are the child of a builder, what you notice outside your house, as well as the chorus of swearing brickies, is you get piles of materials, you get piles of timber, piles of sand, piles of gravel. And after a while, that's kind of become an asset. That's something that you can do something with yourself. You can build it into a house or 5 houses. And this is how I came to have a 3-story tree house before the age of 12. Very popular. The point I'm trying to very, very obliquely make there, I realized, is I've always proved value by delivering value, and that, quietly, kind of a skunk works approach. When you have that capacity, when you have people, when you have data, when you have technology, what can you sort of build somewhat quietly away from project managers, away from funding requests, away from approval? What small little thing can you build and say, well, we've built this, we've tested it out, it's doing this, it's proving this. That, to me, that picture, because that's what it is, that picture paints 1,000 words, is that proof point. And that is you don't have to convince anyone, you don't have to sell anything, you don't have to talk about value you're going to bring in, you've already brought something in. And it's just so easy for someone to say, okay, that looks good, build a bit more, here's a bit more time, here's a bit more investment, go and build it again. So I always try and do it that way, Kyle.
Nice. Steve, because I guess you're relatively early on in your Rightmove journey of kind of piecing all this together and putting the strategy in place and all of that type of good stuff. How do you prioritize which projects you're going to put time and effort and people and money into, and how do you relay that back to getting the right outcome and what that looks like and how you articulate and measure that and so on?
Yeah, spent a lot of work up front with the rest of the executive team, talking about what is value from the strategy for their area. And I've got sort of 4 value buckets. So, delighting consumers, so everyone can spy on the neighbours. It's amazing how many people check the house that's just gone on the market. So, working with partners to create value. We monetize. So we do, data and analytics for monetization, and we think we can make the whole network more efficient. So I've already created the value buckets to frame the conversation. The second thing I do is never do it alone, power of 2. I always get a business sponsor, whatever that is. If it's efficiency, it might be the chief people officer. If it's value creation for B2C, it's the marketing director or whoever owns the consumer. So those are the sort of 2 techniques of value buckets that are agreed and we know how we're going to measure it, and a business partner. So just make them look good. Those are techniques.
Interesting. Aimee, how does that work in your world?
What, showing that tangible value?
Choosing which projects you're going to decide to put money and people and resource and stuff into and getting the outcome that you need.
Yeah, it's probably the same challenges as everybody else, in that there's always a way more problems than you've got resources or capability to deliver against. But just tying it directly into the business strategy is the main thing we prioritize. And then we have something that we call the data capability assessment framework, which is a bit like what someone was talking about on the panel earlier, which is, I think it was Daniel, is have we actually got the data to then do that thing? Is it accessible? Is this lawful? Is it ethical? And also, can we actually build it in the time frame someone wants it? So there's kind of how you prioritize your resources to do the thing, but mainly we're talking about, like, the kind of products we're delivering are always in the short, medium and long-term space concurrently at the same time. So we have big strategic data plans under violence against women and girls, but there'll be short-term, maintaining the dashboard that tells the cops every morning how many violence against women and girls offences there've been, where it was, how it was, so they can self-serve the data. So it might be something short-term we're sustaining, building and then sustaining. Then there's kind of a long-term plan under there that might be, we need a data product that is public-facing, where they can understand how to report things that have happened to them, or how to read information that prevents them from being victims of crime. And you're kind of balancing all sorts of different data products. And that's just one theme. So we've now got about 7 or 8 massive strategic data plans that underpin the business strategy. But they will, for us, there'll be things like violence against women and girls, knife crime, improving disproportionality in the use of controversial, we don't write controversial obviously in our business strategy, but they are controversial policing tactics like stop and search, or the use of taser, or most intimate part searches of people who come into custody. These are the kinds of things that we're providing data and insight about, but they're not just a dashboard that counts those things, which I think sometimes is what policing would just like them to be. But sometimes we're thinking about what's the data streams that are needed to enable those products to be truly accurate, to change the way policing behaves. We could talk about police behaviour all day long. How police behave, how we deliver a service, how we change a service to better meet the needs of the public of London, whether they're victims, suspects, witnesses, or all three, which they sometimes are. So we prioritise largely based on business strategy and then feasibility. But we have to push really hard to build products that they actually need for medium and long term, when short term is usually always the focus.
Nice. Ranil?
So look, I won't repeat, what the other panelists have said. So my 2 builds are, one of the prioritization lenses is, and this is specifically in the context of the new generative AI stuff, right? So all the other machine learning stuff, it's BAU. We don't really have that much rigor around doing that. We just assume it's just BAU. But when it comes to generative AI, so everything that everyone else said, the 2 builds would be, number 1, we prioritize based on whether it's going to create a reusable pattern, right? So we're at this stage now where we know there's we've identified hundreds of use cases. And so the more we can create a reusable pattern that is then reusable across lots and lots of other use cases, that's kind of a big tick in terms of the prioritization process. And then the second one is, again, in the context of the generative AI, right? So just to stop all of the busy work and the experiments, we've had a much more disciplined focus on actually measuring benefits. So typically I haven't really cared about it so much because with a lot of analytics and data and machine learning, there's so many other factors involved, right? There's all sorts of factors, but we've decided for generative AI to keep quite focused on the benefit side. And we look at it sort of basically three ways, right? So one of them is there a cost save? Is there a cost avoidance? Or are we generating incremental benefit? And in these 3 things, right, what we need is the business team that we're working with, they need to actually sign up for those benefits in year, right? So for example, a cost avoidance would be, for example, right? So many banks and leasing companies had an issue with motor vehicle leasing. There was some historical stuff that we all had to go through. So we had this situation where we had to go through something like 25 years of all sorts of documents. And, comparing it to PPI from a few years ago, we had to hire hundreds of temps doing that manually because RPA and OCR, they just weren't good enough. So we built this kind of categorizer and summarizer that meant, as a result of that, we don't have to hire hundreds of temps. There's a big cost avoidance there. So that's an example of that. A incremental benefit would be, we've created a specific tool to basically do risk assessments for commercial real estate leasing deals, right, or lending deals. And what that means is the risk team can now go through, their throughput is now 30 or 40% faster. As a result of that, they signed up to basically selling more loans, right? So that's an example of a incremental, but they had to sign up to that this year. And then a cost save would be, as a result of a automation capability, someone's left or a few people left, you don't need to backfill them. So we've used those mechanisms just at this initial stage so that we've just got the right discipline on focusing on the right things. If that makes sense.
Nice. Yeah. Loretta, anything from you around, I guess, resourcing which projects you resource and why and stuff?
Yeah, so I think one is finance, I think, keep with you along the way to validate. So often you can fall down the trap of going to the shiny number or the shiny priority. that looks brilliant, but actually underneath it is just good chat, and then it fizzles out. And by the time you get, so it depends how well your discipline is tracking that benefit and actually. But the other thing I'd say is like, so our organisation, huge, matrixed, globally spread. The risk as well is you choose the things that you're going to support, but you've got to be very conscious about what are you going to do in-house, what's a competitive advantage, where would you want to deploy your resources from a talent retention perspective, what do you want them working on, what's going to engage them, but then what's going to happen with the things that you say no to, because that doesn't mean they're not valuable. It also doesn't mean that they aren't important to the actual function or the team or the individual that you're speaking to. It's all relative to where that function is or where that individual is. So I think it's important you choose where to deploy your team for lots of reasons from a people, talent, engagement, value perspective. But I think you've got to also have a strong voice and a mechanism and a framework to then what happens with those other things. So if they're going to go out to a third party, how do you co-lead with them? How do you help them with the SOW? How do you make sure that those partners that are coming in, which is the reality, you're never going to carry enough people in-house to do everything. But how do you make sure you've got a strategic relationship with those partners, that you can trust them, that they know how to operate on your technology so that you can spread the value and not just have to feel like you're saying no to stuff, even though it's a little bit down the pecking order.
Nice. Aimee, I'm going to come to you. Have there been projects that you've had to stop doing because you couldn't scale them or you weren't getting to the right outcome?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. No, I'll give you an example of one. So I have been really passionate about getting data from outside the Met to help, outside policing really, it's not just the Met, but policing doesn't understand violence against women and girls. It just doesn't, because 70% of women will not report things that have happened to them, 70% of girls will not report, even though nearly 90% of them will have experienced something that probably could have been reported and would have been a crime, right? That's just a fact. So I'm quite passionate about, well, we don't make it easy for people to report because we treat every crime the same when it comes through. And when we put resources into a place, we target police resources using the same method every time, which is based on geography or trends analysis in terms of crime series or, repeat offenders or repeat victims. We look at the same kind of criminological theory applied to data. But when it's data you don't have, how are you making the right choice, right? So we were trying to get data from external third-party providers in. So safety apps for women, people who are largely route planning, where's a safe route, and then they kind of self-report where not to go. So we were trying to work with a couple of companies to get that data in, to then put into our geography and trend series and everything. I'll be honest with you, that's been proven really hard to scale. So the intent is there on both our parties, but they've got limited experience of data governance inside the third-party apps. So they weren't in a position to be able to then appropriately and legally share the information, even though it was anonymous. Just having a data sharing agreement and them looking after somebody reporting something anonymously is a problem. Then being able to get that data into our system to then scale that up at enough data points to then actually be able to target resources. We've tried a couple of times and it's gone wrong, and we just had to can it. And that breaks my heart because I know it's the right thing to do. Logically, it's the right thing to do. We don't have the data. So today, we are still targeting resources based on what we, the police, know. And it's just not good enough as a service, but how else do we get that information? At the moment, I haven't solved that problem.
Very interesting. I'm conscious of time and we've got 12 questions. Just on that about projects being ended because of scalability issues and so on and so forth, is that something you've all experienced? Yeah? What are any learnings that you've taken from having to end those projects early? Anyone want to?
I'll chip in, yeah, definitely. And what Ron said before in terms of epics and enablers. So I think it's a lot of the time it's because the capability can't scale or the culture can't scale, or try and understand what the route to scale is as well. And we do something similar, which is, what are all the use cases that you want to do? And how do you build capability that are tied to many use cases? Because that's a path to scale. So we start to think about how to scale early, like what are the barriers to scale and how to scale, like to frame the problem. I don't know if that works as a.
Some other things that we've done as well is often there's an end-to-end use case that you might not be able to fully scale, but there'll be lots of components within there that are reusable. And that's a way of, we've got some revenue growth management capabilities, but you compare launching that in a market like Japan versus in a big engine like our away from home business in North America, the data, everything's very different. Like the landscape's different, the availability of data is very different, but actually there's some elements in there that are highly useful for Japan. So although you're not scaling this, there's still a story to be had there, and there's still value to drive from usability. And it's I'd break it down into the different components and think about it slightly differently.
Interesting. Fine.
I have quite an interesting one. Can I just chuck it in?
Yeah, of course you
A few years ago when I worked at GlaxoSmithKline, built a brilliant data product. It was around fatty presses, which compress powder into painkillers. And this data product massively shortened the time for the production lines to do their run. It picked up the anomalies. It really was such a game changer. And it sort of had to be killed because the people working on the production lines, they saw the value, but their current wasn't actually that bad. They were sort of comfortable with it. They weren't really feeling a lot of pain. And sometimes when you have to kind of drag people through the glass and to get them to feel the pain of today, you don't really have the energy to deploy something. And also some of these things, you need to be sure the people you're deploying it to have the fortitude to change entire processes and really do things differently. And Davin said something interesting earlier. He said when you're a company that builds roads and you're used to building a bit of road, then another road, then another road, you approach everything like that. I think in the manufacturing environment, we approached everything like a production line, and we didn't approach things like people and how people actually felt about things. That was a big learning for me. Mm-hmm. Machines are one thing, and people are not those machine things.
Interesting. Yeah, so the people challenge around the scale as opposed to the capability itself. Interesting. Aimee, we've been asked for another.
I've seen it.
Do you want to do that? Do I do it now or at the end?
I'll do it at the end.
Okay, perfect.
Private showings.
So someone has asked or said that the irony is that we lack the data to prove the value of improving our data. How can we tackle this issue? Anyone have a stab at that one?
That's not that's not true, is it? Because there's people in this room who've done it. Sorry.
Would you like to?
I'm being challenging. Yeah. I think that's true that most of us don't have the data to show the value of the data to the organisation as an asset. But there are people in here who've done it, and I'm always calling out Davin, and it's getting boring. But there are organisations who have, like National Highways, who have been able to put an economic value on the data that they hold and have a data valuation for their financial balance sheet. And if you've got the energy and the time and the skill to do that, I think that's when you take data into a game-changing position for your organisation. And it's taken me 6 years to get policing. The Home Office Minister is now going to invest in doing this for police data. And I've had to bang on and bang on and bang on about what's the theory of why it's important to understand the value of the data that we hold, because that will get us a good spending review. That is what will get longer term investment in policing. That is what will get you to focus your effort. But you can start small by just understanding the quality of your data. Do you know the data quality dashboard is the second most looked at dashboard in the Met? There are lots of data dashboards in the Met, I hasten to add. The top one is Suspect Prioritisation Platform, which is something we built to identify wanted offenders. So cops come in the morning and they check who are the offenders that are still wanted in their area, and they go out and try and nick them. It doesn't get more operational. But the data quality dashboard is who's not putting the data in right, because we're starting to create a culture around there's data that matters, and there are repeat offenders inside the Met, because it's cops that put the data into our systems, who don't do it well. And I bet you there's a correlation between how the cops in the Charing Cross custody suite were probably really crap at putting data in, because they don't care about people and they don't care about each other. So I bet they weren't very good at putting the data. So we're now saying, well, is that a leading indicator for where we need to root out people with the wrong behaviours in our organisation? Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. But the point is, you can track the quality of your data, and it's a really small indicator of quite a lot of other things about your organisation. What I'm not saying is use the dashboard to make everything 100% before you start anything. I'm just saying you've got a way of understanding and tracking the data and starting to explain to people why things aren't working when they want to roll out AI. where it's not working for you because nobody's filled the gender box in. It's not working for you because we don't ask people to record their ethnicity. So you're not going to be able to make a decision about disproportionality because we don't have enough data. So don't bother applying Gen AI to that, for instance.
Yep.
So you can track it and do it.
I'm going to stick with you, Aimee, for 1 second, because
God.
there's a follow-up question about re-educating the teams, because there's a complaint that it's impossible to link work to revenue and value and all of that type of stuff. So you just said it's taken you 6 years to effectively bang the drum enough now, and they've decided they're going to do this and invest. What hoops did you have to jump through to make that a reality?
So when I'm talking about investing, I'm talking about home office level. So for those who don't understand policing, there are 43 forces in the UK, in England and Wales, and then you've got PSNI and you've got Scotland. So 45 independent organisations, and I work in one of them, the biggest one, but one of them. So we've got to a point where we've convinced the Home Office Minister, the policing minister, to invest to do it across all of policing data. So that's why it's taken me a long time. But the evidence to get me there has been about just rolling my sleeves up and going, this matters to me so much. I'm going to make my data teams understand what we've got to do, start to track the value and start talking about that inside my own organisation, and then showing that to other people in other forces who really track into it. I'm now at the point where we're training all of our executive leadership programme, the top cops in the UK, about this on their training course. So now everyone's talking about it.
Yep.
That's how you so it's taken me that long because I've kind of created a groundswell of doing it, and it's exhausting, but it will mean that the Home Office doesn't get a crap funding settlement in 5-6 years time. Hopefully.
Interesting. I'm going to give you a break. There is another question
Good,
for you, but I'll move on to the next one for now. Stephen, someone's asked how you move from talking about the value and partnering with the business, as you talked about earlier, to actually then delivering against that, and I guess the technology and the data challenges that are applied to actually delivering something that then becomes value.
Yeah, maybe it's that back to co-creation again. So work with the business, co-creation. So then you get the technologists and the data and the business people together to work on it as a collective challenge. So at some stage you do have to do a bit of tech and a bit of data, but we frame it in, this is the business problem. Can you please explain what it is? You know, we want to drive consumer engagement around new properties because we want more eyeballs, because actually, new homes aren't getting viewed, right? That's a specific problem. We're not selling enough stock there. We'll work with you on that. Can you frame it again? And then we start to have our experts. So data expert, how do you approach it from a data perspective? Oh, well, actually, we could build a model that helps you predict that, right? Technology person, can we do that in the current stack that we've got? Well, actually, we've got a load of reuse there. So co-creation, I think, is the way that's worked best at Rightmove. If you build it in isolation, it never connects. You don't get the adoption. And trying to get the technical and data people with more business knowledge is how I try to sort of make it a win-win.
Nice. Loretta, I'll come to you on the next question. There's a couple of AI-rooted ones, as we'd expect. Someone's asked, how do you get stakeholders to sign up to the benefits of AI initiatives when the figures may be much larger or more unknown than they are used to?
I think if you're ending up selling it, I think probably in the wrong position already from the start. So I don't feel like I'm in a position at Kellanova where I'm having to go to people to kind of say, I think you should use AI. I think it's a capability like lots of others out there. We play a big role in helping to advise when it's needed and when it's best applied and how we do it in the best way, in the most cost-effective way. But I suppose it's not necessarily a muscle. I think I'd be having other alarm bells if I was having to go out and kind of. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, there's a different challenge now, right? It used to be just us guys and our technology partners going to conferences and hearing about stuff that was about to launch, and you always felt a little bit like you were one step up. Now you're getting kind of. We were just chatting on the break, right? Other people are hearing about stuff and they're expecting you to know, and you're like these things are being launched. There's probably 5 that have just been launched, at all the conferences around London just in the last couple of hours. You can't possibly keep ahead of it. So, I think it's back to the usual. Just use your muscle about how you advise of delivering the value, but try and keep them away from just thinking that they've just got to drop an AI bomb every now and again. It's not going to.
Nice. Zach has asked, is the adoption of AI inside your team changing the cost and speed of your value creation? How are you changing your team structures as a result of AI in data and analytics? Ranil, I'll come to you on that one because I know you've put a lot of work into the AI capability.
Yeah,
Lloyds.
so we've really going through a model of trying to federate more and more of the work out into basically business teams and really not have these centers of excellence anymore. So, 4 years ago, the center of excellence was very data science heavy. Now data science is BAU. All of our data scientists are federated across the business. And what we have in the central teams is slightly more highly skilled AI developer. There's more PhDs. There's more engineering skills as well. So basically, so the composition has definitely changed, and it will continue to change, right? So our goal is to incubate skills and then just federate them out into business teams, and then look what's the next skill that we need to do. So that's kind of the big shift, is basically handing over teams to the business, leaving them there, getting them to projects, and then sort of really working on the same, like what the new skill is. In terms of are we doing things more cost effectively? There are definitely less people in the center than we had a few years ago, so we don't need as many. It's just we need a smaller amount of more highly skilled people. So that has reduced the cost as well.
Interesting. Yeah. Jane, someone's asked you specifically how you manage to ring fence the resources to work quietly in a corner on that POC to paint the picture. Most teams are under-resourced already.
Yeah, it's a good question because there's a limit to what you can do quietly in a corner, isn't there? There's a limit to how secretively you can work on things. I can tell you how I did it. I had a body of things that had been done sort of covertly. But there comes a point, I think, when I had to say, well, I'm a chief data officer at this company. I probably have a view into the future and a point of view that maybe I have expertise in that you don't. I have a point of view as well. I have ideas on the horses that we're going to back, and I'm going to ring fence this section of my team to work on these things. Now, we all know here it's very difficult to do that. A business will say, well, we pay for the P&L, we pay for you. You have to do what we say. So these are not easy conversations to have. But there is a point in time when you have to sort of kill that inner dweeb and say, we are going to do this. That is what I did, waited anxiously for my P45 in the post. It sort of never came. But I think because what made those conversations easier was because I had the bank of small, quietly done POCs that had shown value, delivered something, and it was just the lead up to those conversations.
Nice. Well, there was a lot of questions up there, and obviously we don't have time to get through them all. So if you did have a question for someone on the panel, please ask away in the break. You're all happy to field some questions? Perfect. So what's going to happen now, we're going to have a bit of a networking break. Before we do that, we have our networking partner, Data Literacy Academy, going to come up and say a few words. Before I invite Greg up to the stage, can I also ask if you're going to be chairing one of the round tables for us? After Greg's said his thing, can you just come to the front of the stage so we can make sure that we've got a chairperson for each round table and not all 8 of you are sat on the same table, because that would be disastrous. But big round of applause to all of our panelists. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Been given 5 minutes, more than likely won't use it all. For anybody who doesn't know us, my name's Greg Freeman, I'm the CEO of Data Literacy Academy. At Data Literacy Academy, we help large organizations to roll out data and people culture programs across the wider organization. So our specialist audience are the business people that we've spent so much of today talking about. We always say we don't teach data people data. We think data people are pretty good at that. For us, it's about how do we bring the rest of the organization on the journey. We do everything from ground zero, frontline workers, and we've just released an on-demand platform that many of you may have seen advertised on LinkedIn, which will give you the scale across the whole organization. And we work all the way up to exec. And honestly, I think exec is one of our favorite types of work. I think it's a really, really difficult thing to do as an internal leader, because actually for the speed of change you guys need, you need to disrupt really quickly. And you also need to keep your jobs and keep paying your mortgages. So I do enjoy going in and positively disrupting exec teams. If that's a problem for you, more than happy to help there. In terms of the QR code behind us, that is to announce that we've just launched a book. So it's called the Data and AI Literacy Bible. It's based on running over 100 programs across enterprise, which is a body of work that we don't believe any other organization has. So hopefully there's plenty to learn. We're also, if you care about dogs, love a dog, right? If you're at the British Data Awards, the best part of the day was when Dogs Trust won the award. Nobody else remembers anything apart from Dogs Trust winning their award at the end. So we are going to donate all proceedings from the book, whether it's bought by you, your colleagues, or whoever it is, to Dogs Trust until the end of 2026, and then we'll probably pick another charity partner. We have no intentions of making money off sharing what we do. So if you care about dogs, scan the QR code and buy the book. Other than that, have a lovely rest of your day. Adam and Ben are sat at the back and more than happy to talk to you in the networking area around data and AI literacy. Thank you very much.